Oh, hi there. I didn't know anyone was creeping on me. Well, since you're here, let's talk about financial institution website design briefly. My name is Andrew Zeller. I'm a senior web designer at Panos Marketing, and I get stopped all the time by people on the street, and they say, "Hey, Andrew, if you had no limitations, what would the future of bank and credit union website look like?" That could be a little hard to answer. Design is always changing, affected by outside influences from different mediums, fine art, things like that, trends, whatnot. But it's really definitely affected a lot by technological advancements and things we understand about users' behavior and user experience more and more as time goes on through analytics and heat mapping. But from just a purely visual standpoint today, you might look at your site every 4 to 5 years and feel like it's not looking like other sites that are out there, maybe not as good. And stuff that I, of course, have seen a lot more of and that I would like to do more of, but isn't really on a lot of FI sites still, that I think could really help in a lot of key areas, um, would be this list of 5 points that I have not prepared beforehand at all to talk about today. So just kind of getting right into it. The first thing is I'd like to ease up on the grid a little bit. The grid is a invisible design kind of structure we use on print and websites to place content. It's columns of different widths, and it's all over the place. You can see it sometimes; it's very obvious. Sometimes it's not, but it's usually there, and that's how we place items to be very pleasing to the eye. But let's say on the homepage, for example, if you ease up on the grid a little bit, you can end up with a lot more organic and unique homepages because the content is coming in and placed in ways that doesn't feel so structured. Now, sometimes that structure can make you a little nervous and uneasy. Don't worry, the grid is still actually there. It's just being hidden more. And so that's what I mean by easing up on it. We could use our typography, our images, our paragraphs, and all of that in more unique ways so it doesn't feel like a template at all. And people are a little surprised and they might spend more time on your homepage. And so some of those things that go on to, let's just keep using the homepage as an example, that kind of work with and with the grid that I would like to see more of is interesting typography. More interesting typography can really keep people engaged a lot better and a lot longer. If it's not just a big column of a headline and a paragraph below it, they might not want to read it. So as you try to say more with less, which is always a good practice, so people just kind of jump in and see and read what they need to, you open up the door to more interesting typography. You can start making it bigger, more interesting, different typefaces, crop it, layer it. You can do a lot more if you're not trying to put in 4 or 5 sentences. And so better typography can get people engaged a little bit more, and I'd like to have more fun with that. Kind of thinking about the homepage, you go to the top of a page and there's always a big image. It's kind of a staple of the web. You always have that big image. And that's great. We're going to talk about images, but I would like to see that maybe be an animation more. Something that you've put together using your brand styles and your design systems that was custom made for you and as an animation. It's almost like a little movie. You're telling a little story up there. A photo comes on and it's static and it says what it needs to say. But in animation, you can take someone through different steps. You can tell them the message differently because you could have a beginning and an end, for one example. But it also is unexpected and it brings a certain amount of energy and life to a page that you don't see a lot on FI sites. And so an animation would be really neat in that sense. And every little things even too, of course, your drop down menu, your menus coming out, those are all animated, but specifically outside of those realms, even little icons and examples like that. You go down the page, icons come to life. It might entice you to engage with other parts of the page because maybe you just want to see what it does, or it moved and it caught your eye, and now that's what I'm looking at. So animations are great. Now, I kind of harped on photography a bit there, talking about that big feature. And photography is not going anywhere. It's great. It's a part of every website. It does a great job of framing up content, working with a message, creating emotional reactions out of people. Photography is great. But we play it kind of safe on FI sites. And there's so many ways we could do more with photography. For starters, don't rely on stock so much if you can. If you can get away from it, let's get away from it. Let's get away from the model with the perfect teeth looking right at the camera with a thumbs up. People know that that's not genuine. And we all see the same photos everywhere. So, we all got cell phones that have like 20 cameras now on the back. They're great. They take great photos. Go out and get some community photos. Go into one of your locations and just set up a photo shoot with some customers and your staff interacting with them. Get something genuine that's really only your photo. Win it if you can. Hire a local photographer and throw some money back into the local art scene of your community. Might even be cheaper sometimes. And then once you have those photos, have fun with them. Try different effects. Try a duotone effect, so it's using your brand colors. Try black and white. Try a texture on top of it, a pattern on top of it. You can do a lot more with photos than we typically see. They're very safe because you feel like maybe that photo is what's doing the selling for you. But really all the photo is doing is creating a point for you to look at something. And then the message and the CTA is what actually is kind of getting you there. The photo is just serving the role to kind of frame up something for you. And then when you're thinking about who goes into your photos, you always need to be thinking of diversity, whether that be age diversity, gender diversity, nationality and race diversity, absolutely. But there's other little groups in there that don't get represented, and without like going too deep into the weeds on it, let's take one example that's near and dear to my heart: people with tattoos. I've got tattoos. And don't you want this face on your website? So, think about it that way. More genuine, real people, someone with tattoos. Think about kind of groups that don't get represented a lot. And I think the last thing to talk about would be illustrations. They're kind of wrapped up with animation, but illustrations get kind of a bad rap. They're too cartoony sometimes, but there's so many styles you can do an illustration in. But much like animation, whether it's moving or it's static, they're great because you're controlling that narrative now because you've probably made the illustration or hired someone to make the illustration. And so we're using your brand guidelines, your design systems, and it's yours. I'm not going to see that anywhere else, and you can focus in on what you're trying to say a little bit better. It's sometimes hard to find that perfect photo, but an illustration was made from the ground up, and it's just unexpected. And no matter what, an illustration brings kind of a certain voice to a part of a page, a certain personality that you just don't see a lot of. So illustrations would be great. And I think the last thing I'll say, that I've talked a lot about what I want to add. What I would want to remove from FI sites is the homepage slider right there at the top of your page, cycling through stuff. It's not doing probably for you what you think it's doing for you. It's just kind of limiting all these things we've talked about because you can't quite do so much with that. But nobody's looking at them. And there's better tools now to have the right slider put in front of the right audience through AI and personalization, so you just don't need it anymore. It had its run, it was a good run, but it's time to just let it go and never be seen or heard from again, at least in the traditional sense. There's still a use for some sliders in other ways when you're trying to hit a specific goal, but that homepage feature slider, just let it go. So yeah, those were some of my points I just wanted to kind of get in front of you today. I hope this has been informative, and you have a nice rest of the day.